Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's video, we're going to be doing a DIY project. We're going to be installing a whole house sediment filter. Stay tuned. All right, so of all of the different trades that you could possibly know and that could help you save money and that would be a good trade to get good at, I would say plumbing is probably one of the top ones. Because plumbers can be real expensive if you hire out plumbing, and plumbing is one of the things that you're probably going to have to do the most when you own your own home. Think about how often you use your shower, your tub, your dishwasher, your washing machine. Those are the kind of things that constantly need repairs and maintenance and parts replaced. And like I said, if you learn how to do some of that stuff yourself, you can save a lot of money. And that's actually why when I went to trade school, I took up plumbing for my 4-year study. My father was a carpenter, so I learned carpentry from him, and it was pretty evident to me in exploratory freshman year that I wasn't going to learn a ton of carpentry. A lot of the stuff they were talking about I had already known for a while from my father, so I decided instead to take up plumbing because, like I said, I think it's a great trade to know, and it can save you a lot of money if you know how to do it. Quick disclaimer. Please note, Build a Lot Acres does not assume any responsibility for anything viewers do on their own. That is your responsibility as a property owner to check with your local municipality and make sure you're following all proper procedures and obtaining any necessary permits. So before we get into the actual installation, let's go over some of the different components and parts that we're going to need. So obviously we're going to need the sediment filter. This is actually from Lowe's. This is a Project Source is the brand. And of course, with that filter housing, you're going to need a filter, which you're going to have to replace these every 3 to 6 months. And that's going to depend largely on how much sediment and things you have to remove. So the filter is going to come with a wrench, which is going to make it easier to turn on and off when you have to replace it. And one of the important things is you're going to want to isolate this filter so that you can work on it, remove your cartridge, remove your housing. And to do that, you're going to need shutoff valves. I've never tried shock bite. These are actually designed so you don't need to solder. I did do a lot of soldering, like I said, in plumbing class, and I'm pretty proficient at soldering, but these shock bite fittings are designed, you just push them onto the pipe and there's no soldering required. They make these for PEX, they make them for copper, they make them for different types of pipe. So we're gonna give these a whirl. So like I said, you wanna isolate that filter, which is going to allow you to work on it. So you're going to have a shut off in each side of the filter. So the filter does come with a bracket. That's going to allow you a strong connection to hold the filter up, because when you have this full of water, there is going to be quite a bit of weight pulling down on that filter. You could also use just some regular tube straps or C-clamps, whatever you want to call them. You could use those also to support the filter. I got some 1-inch male adapters. This is going to screw into the housing. I already put some Teflon tape in those. And that's going to allow me to go from a male thread to the 1-inch copper pipe. The filter does come with a timer. I don't think this is required, but it's not a bad idea. This is going to allow you, it's going to go off I think it's every 90 days or 3 months, which is going to remind you that you need to change the filter. But it's not required, but it's probably not a bad idea. So another important piece of my install is going to be these slip couplings. A slip coupling has no marking in the middle or anything preventing it, so you can slide this right over the pipe, put your whole assembly in place, slide the couplings over and solder them. So I am going to have 4 joints that I need to solder for this installation, but due to the various pipes that come into my 1-inch main, I don't have the flexibility to push it apart and get this in there without the use of these slip couplings. Your situation may vary. And the last component we're going to talk about is the bonding clamps with the bonding wire. You're going to have one of these clamps on each side of the filter over that copper pipe. And then it does come with a short bonding wire, but I got a heavier duty number 4 copper wire that's a longer length. And that way we'll be plenty safe. That's going to allow you getting rid of the risk of electrocution after you install your filter. So you are going to need some basic hand tools for this kind of project. I would recommend having a lot of these tools on hand. If you saw my last video, I did the top 5 things all homeowners and property owners need. And one of those things is a good assortment of tools, and that includes plumbing tools. So let's go over some of the tools that you're going to need for this project. If you don't have these on hand, you could possibly try to borrow them from somebody, or you go to a place like Harbor Freight, you probably pick them up really reasonably priced. Obviously, if you're a professional plumber or you're looking to get into that as a trade, you're gonna want some better quality tools. But if you're only gonna use these tools once in a great while on your own stuff for your house, there's nothing wrong with Harbor Freight tools. So the tools you're gonna need are gonna be a torch. I like MAP gas because it burns hotter and it's a little better in my opinion than propane, which burns at a lower temperature and just doesn't heat up the joint as quick when you need to solder. So a good torch. You're gonna need a tubing cutter to cut your copper. They make different styles you can get. I have these old Copex pipe slices. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen these. A lot of brands make these now, but I believe Copex was the original one. Unfortunately, I only have them in 1/2 and 3/4. I don't have a 1-inch, but basically you put this on there, and as you turn it, it automatically tightens. These are great for small spaces, like if you're doing something under a sink and you're replacing something for your faucet. These come in really handy. And they do also make miniature versions of the tubing cutters. You're also going to want some emery cloth or sandpaper to clean up the outsides of your pipe, because that's going to be the key to getting a good solder joint, which you're going to see later on. So emery cloth or sandpaper. You're going to need some flux to get your solder to stick and clean the pipe. You're going to want some Teflon tape. You're going to want some brushes. These are good for cleaning the insides of the fittings. They make different sizes, obviously, for different size pipes. This is a 1/2 inch. I have 3/4, 1-inch. I think I have 1.25 inches, etc. You're going to need a brush to apply the flux. I guess you could use your finger or a rag, but I like using something like this. It's kind of like a little paintbrush. You're going to need solder. And you're going to need a variety of sizes of wrenches to tighten the fittings. If you don't have a lot of wrenches, you could just get an adjustable. It's a good thing to have around the house. Anyways, I would recommend you wear safety glasses so you don't have solder or anything coming into your eyes. You're either going to need a drill, or an impact driver, or screwdrivers to tighten up your bonding clamps. You're going to want a rag to clean the drips of solder off your fittings. It's not a requirement, but it looks neater and it makes for a better job. And lastly, you're going to want, I would say 1 or 2 at least 5-gallon buckets. You're going to want those when you start cutting into it. You're going to have water coming out. Even shutting the main off, you're still going to have water in the lines. And to avoid making a mess, get yourself a couple of buckets. So let's go. A couple of other tools I think I forgot to mention would be a ladder, depending on how high your ceiling is, a tape measure, and a pencil to mark your pipe. So step 1 is going to be figuring out where your main water shutoff is. Give that baby a turn. Now the water's off. You want to find a low point that you can drain your system from. Otherwise, when you cut that pipe, you're going to have gallons and gallons of water to contend with. So let's drain something. So the next part of the project is going to be deciding where to put this. You know, there's a few factors you want to consider. You want to put it somewhere obviously that's easily accessible, that you can change out the cartridge, the filter when you need to, but you also want it out of the way. You don't want it somewhere that you're going to be constantly bumping it with your head, or maybe moving furniture and bumping it and you could cause it to break. And I would say the last consideration is your floor joists. These are 16 inches on center, which is a standard deviation for framing members. So you kind of want to set it up, at least I do, that this is kind of in the middle of a bay, and then you also kind of want your shutoffs in the middle of a bay. You don't want your shutoff to fall right under a floor joist, and then you can't open your handle for your shutoff. So kind of plan out where you're going to put all your stuff. I'm going to mark mine. We'll be back in a bit. So I got my two slip couplings in place. They make two style couplings. One has a stop or an indent in the middle, and you won't be able to slide it past the pipe. The other style, a slip coupling like I have, you can slide it all the way past the pipe, put your assembly in place, slide it back halfway, solder it, and you're good to go. So for these 1-inch shark bite fittings, it goes into the fitting 1 5/16 inches. So I'm going to take my two measurements, which is 4 inches. I'm going to add 1 5/16 inches on each end. So that would be 6 5/8. That's the length of each pipe. Let's go cut those. So just like your solder fittings, you do want to clean your pipe prior to inserting it into the shark bite. You do not need the flux, obviously, but you do need to clean it. That's going to help get a good seal around that O-ring. All right, got them cleaned up. So I've never done shark bite before, so this will be a first for me. There we go. Should get it out of the way. We should have the same measurement. I know the first one went in really well. So we got 5 3/8. 5 3/8. Perfect. There's a couple of tricks I'm going to do before I lift this in place. I'm going to mark half the length of the slip couplings on my pipe. That way when I lift this in place and I pull those slip couplings over, I know where to stop it so it's halfway. And there's one more trick I'm going to show you. And that trick, believe it or not, is going to be to take some bread. White, cheap bread like Wonder Bread works better. You don't want to use a good quality bread like rye because it won't break up as easy. Take some small pieces of that bread and you're going to stuff it in the pipe. That's going to absorb any water that comes down so you can get a good solder joint, and the water pressure is going to disintegrate that bread after you're all done. Okay. Don't forget to apply your flux to these joints you're going to solder. Now you are going to have an inlet side and an outlet side on your filter, so you want to make sure obviously the inlet is coming in first. All right, moment of truth. All right, full pressure. Let's check our fittings. I don't see anything. That's good. That's really good. This is the one I was the most concerned about. I didn't feel like I got a good solder connection because of that water that was on the pipe on the other side, but I think that old bread trick did the trick. Thank you, Mr. Szymanski. Let's do the bonding ground. So the last piece of the puzzle is going to be putting this ground rod on the pipe. So basically the way this works is, if I can ever get the bag open. All right, so the way these work is you're gonna have one of these in each side of the pipe on the outside of your shutoffs here. And then you're gonna connect that with this number 4 copper wire. The kit comes with this little piece of number 6 or whatever, but it's not really long enough. And the manual called for number 4, so that's what I'm gonna use. But the purpose of this is for safety. Say a loose wire energized this copper pipe, it would trip a breaker before you get electrocuted. So it's really just matter of safety, but it is something you definitely want to make sure you do. Let's get this other one on for a quick moment here. I just left it a little long, so that way if I ever want to move it or do something different in the future, I have plenty of number 4 wire. All right, friends, I think that's going to about do it for today's video. As I said in the beginning, please check with your local ordinance or town or city for the appropriate permits and licenses required to do this work, because a lot of places will require things like a licensed plumber to do the work. So until next time, have a good one.